it's interesting that for most of human history, the way we shared information is the way we're doing right now in conversation. And psychologically, there's whole systems in our brains and our consciousness that are designed to organize and integrate information so it's useful for us during conversation. I mean, so we need all hands on deck. We're in the middle of a massive awakening right now. Everybody's voice matters. And the more we can form a unity, not to separate our individualities, not to mask what makes us different, but to embrace that and then create a place where everybody's differences can come together to form a symphony, a chorus of truth-seeking voices. Wow, nothing can stop that. You guys are just rocking it out of the park. So,
interesting. Like now the Pentagon is kind of saying yes, for sure. But they've been circulating these same videos over and over and over. The Pentagon has even said that this is just the beginning. These are just some of the videos. So they have more. You can tell they're doing this in a controlled fashion, but they're deliberately focusing on these ones. And I do feel like I kind of lean to what you said, that it could be some government craft. I don't really know, but I do know that they're coming out with the disclosure in their own form in order to basically drip it to the public in a way that suits them, rather than, full disclosure, which will actually be beneficial to all of humanity. For example, this is all started with Tom DeLonge release talking about these UFOs. But if you notice, any of the communications in regards to this have never been about, are these ETs who are driving these aircraft? It's been about technology and how we can utilize this technology to better, our basically national security and military. It's really kind of taking the conversation away from the fact that if these UFOs are UFOs and they aren't human, because they're trying to basically imply that, we don't know what they are. We don't even, we know that the Russians aren't even capable of it. Just saying things like that. They're saying that they know that there's no other government on this planet that are capable of creating these craft. So they're implying some sort of extraterrestrial connection there, because they're not admitting they have a black ops project happening. But we don't talk about that. We talk about the craft. We talk about how we can monetize it, how we can weaponize space. So there's definitely something going on there that's not in alignment with the ascension, right? Mm-hmm. I'm just kind of observing it. I'm going to see what's happening from this, but right now it's kind of weird. It happens in increments too. I think they control the dates when they want to release this. I even think that it happening in the midst of this whole coronavirus thing was kind of happened for a reason too, maybe because more people are at home. People called me today that are my friends that aren't into this conversation, that had never called me before in the last 3 years through all the other drip disclosures. Right. And it's because they're at home and they're aware of it now.
Yeah.
So those are my thoughts.
And as soon as I saw DeLonge's name in the article, I knew exactly where they were going with it. I knew what the agenda. I knew exactly. I didn't even really have to read the article. I did, but I knew, okay, Tom DeLonge, just tic tac. And somebody actually on Twitter, I saw somebody recognized that the video that they uploaded, the DOD uploaded to put out, is actually a download from YouTube. It still has the YouTube metadata, and the actual original footage is a lot better quality than what they just released. So That's kind of suspicious. Also, why would they do that? Why would they have to download it from YouTube and then
that's a little
so
weird.
It makes me wonder if it really is a Pentagon release or if there's something else going on behind it too. I know Dr. Sala, John D'Souza, Mike Barra have all came to the conclusion together that they believe this is an advanced military drone. Mm-hmm. It doesn't take away from the fact that we're still, seeding the consciousness and, waking up people with this drip disclosure. What are your thoughts, Justin?
Yeah, well, I think, in a grand picture sense, all the events that happen on our worlds are opportunities for us to do something with. And if the question is this going to be helpful for the awakening of humanity, then the answer is yes. But the follow-up question is, what are we going to do about it? And if we're just sitting on our hands waiting for the president or the bad guys to all of a sudden change their colors and want to start revealing the truth, then I don't think that's the right way to approach it, So I actually think that this UFO, like what you were suggesting, is probably a secret government craft. I also suspect that there's a breakaway civilization somewhere on our world. It's possible that they're in Antarctica or in some subterranean cavern and things like this. Why is it that John Kerry went to go to Antarctica right after Trump won the election? Why are all these people going to Antarctica after Trump won the election? Was Trump part of the deep state? Was he an establishment person? You know, were they going back down there to get new marching orders? These kind of things. All those, I think, are questions that we can ask to try to wrap our head around what's happening. And, you know, I do think there's like a political aspect. You know, the media is losing the plot in a big way. I would argue a big piece of that chess move, if you want to think about it that way, is Trump doing these press conferences. I mean, he's speaking directly to the people through Twitter. He's speaking directly to people through these press conferences. And whether you love the guy or you hate a guy, it doesn't really matter. What you get to see is you get to see what he says, and then you get to see how the media reports on it. And the discrepancy is so obvious that anybody who hasn't sacrificed their intellectual honesty on the altar of social acceptance is going to see the fact that this is obviously lies and there's something going on. So, yeah, I think, you know, I think the full amount of disclosure we have available is so massive. You know, we do need some type of controlled process for getting it out there. You know, in the beginning, I was a little bit more idealistic, and I'm like, let's just let all the truth out. You know, everything will fix itself. And yeah, we can certainly go that route. But, you know, the deeper psychology is here. The basis of trauma is when there's too much information that you don't know how to handle. And so, you know, I want the truth to get out, but I don't want to traumatize people in the process, because if they get traumatized, they're in a non-thinking, irrational state. They're much easier to control, much easier to manipulate. And that's what these guys want to do. Right. So yeah, I think, you know, we're in a position where we as alternative media, we as truth seekers, have incredible amounts of power. We've got a lot of free time on our hands right now. We can actually interact with each other, form groups, form initiatives, form trusts, form like coalitions and grassroots efforts, so that we can better deal with the things that are becoming. And I think this year we've got some big stuff on the ticket as far as things happening this year.
Seriously, so. Yeah. You know, also to kind of add to what you're saying, when it comes to the media, I'm now 100% convinced that it's all about ratings. You know, all about ratings and also all about agendas, right? And I think it was Project Mockingbird, right? Was that the one with the CIA basically had full-time employees, right? So for who doesn't know out there, I think it might have been FBI too, but no, the CIA had full-time employees working for news stations, and then Project Mockingbird, you know, supposedly ended. But what normally happens with those is they just go black budget and they continue. And not only were these anchors actually being paid from the news stations just to have their covered, like, you know, CNN would be paying them, but they'd also be getting paid from the CIA because they were pushing the agenda. So that continues. So I think there's two things going on. That we have not only ratings-oriented media, but we also have these people that are hired from, you know, these three-letter agencies or whatever in order for them to push this agenda. So when it comes to releasing this whole thing about UFOs, I'm not too sure. Like, it's just so coordinated. For example, when Tom DeLonge came out with the initial thing that kind of started this whole process, right? Like talking about these videos, every single competing news agency had the same exact headlines and the same words in it. And you've seen those viral videos with news anchors saying the same thing at the end, like, this is dangerous to our democracy, for example. They all say that, right? Like,
they all say the exact same.
Yeah. So that's what happened. And I was like, wait, this is a conservative one. This is a liberal one. This ain't the same thing. They talk crap on each other all the time. And it was so like blatant when the Tom DeLonge thing happened. And it was almost like they waited. They all came out at the same time, too. It was like the same minute. So it was just like, wow, this just shows that it's all owned by the same whatever. And they're just doing this for some sort of reason that we don't really know. We don't know what the agenda is.
Understanding the censorship agenda is really interesting because, you know, I study a lot of law. And I was trying to understand, like, why is it that they even came out with this internet? Why is it so much information, like, out there? If the whole basis of the Matrix is that they have to keep certain truths hidden, then why is there so much of it readily accessible on the internet?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, the answer I've come up with, which seems to be, you know, the one that's the most correct as far as I can tell, is that and I actually covered a lot of this in the episodes I'm putting out on Into the Storm right now, if you want to check this out. Well, basically, the cabal had to create a self-imposed slavery system. And the reason they needed to do that is because when you use overt control, when you're like literally whipping people in the fields to keep them picking the cotton or whatever it is you need them to do, they are not creative. Their energy that they put out is largely fearful energy, but there's not any innovation. And as a society, in order to ascend, in order to go to the higher states of consciousness, which the bad guys are trying to do too, they need information, they need wisdom, they need knowledge, they need data to crunch on, and then evolve their soul through gaining wisdom and contemplation. So if you got an overt slavery system, which we've had for most of our history, at least the stuff we know about, then they can't really move that forward. But if you create a self-imposed slavery system, then all of the slavery gets hidden behind a veil. And now people on the slave plantation think they're free, which means they're innovating, they're creating things. And then the cabal can hijack and harvest that information. So to your point, Aaron, I think one of the things that's happened is that the censorship has gotten more overt because they've lost the plot. They thought that they were going to be able to do all these things. And, we can get more into the details of how that works, but they thought they were going to be able to control society. Now they can't. And now they're just frantically trying to stomp the hedgehogs. You ever play that game in the arcade where you try like hit the hedgehogs,
Yeah, whack-a-mole.
Whack-a-mole.
That's it, whack-a-mole, yeah. They're trying to whack-a-mole everything, and they can't do it. So it's a really good sign.
It's like, I've been saying for a while, we have the illusion of freedom, and it's freedom through diplomacy, almost. Like they basically, like, we're the U.S., we're like a test tube for pharmaceutical companies, for agriculture and food. Other countries aren't even as bad as us, but we come across like we're the most free, right? Like no one has freedom like the U.S. For example, artificial flavorings, red 5 and blue, whatever. Mm-hmm. It's completely illegal in Europe, completely, right? Over here, it's just like part of our diet, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just like their own people, these own corporations, their own country, they're experimenting on. And they're getting all these results from it and figuring out how to control us. But here we are every single day tooting the fact that we're the most free country on the planet, which really isn't the case. Now, in regards to your point for the media, I think it's been the same for quite some time. However, they've perfected psychological warfare to the point that they are now using marketing tools. For example, the head of CNN, and I think I might have just read an article recently that Trump, something happened where the head of CNN has been switched, or one of the media agencies.
He stepped down. Yeah, I believe he stepped down, actually.
Okay. So he was actually the head of ESPN before CNN. And he had this whole mentality of presenting news like sports. So if you look at ESPN and how they have all those windows and they're all arguing back and forth, there's videos out there that show you the mirror reflection of how he took his sports marketing plan and put it in CNN. So that's something they did as well that's more new than ever, is they've figured out how to make it a game and how to get people on the edge of their seat and dramatize it all. And that's what they perfected, getting people lost into the drama of the news rather than giving anything of any substance.
Yeah, and I saw a meme today of a mask, and it said mind control device. And it's so true, though, because if you really understand what's going on, you realize how I think it's dumb to have to wear a mask everywhere you go. People are driving with them. And it's the mind control aspect of it also. It's not just a fear, but it is MK Ultra. And we've all talked about this for ages now.
It's really interesting. A few years ago, I would have had a pretty unidimensional perspective on all this. Like, the media is lying to us. Everybody in government's a liar. Everybody in the military is part of this deep state cooperation. They're all boogeymen. It's all bad, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And with Q and everything like that, it's just, in my mind, having looked at a lot of the information and, being somebody who is versed in epistemology, which is like basically the science of what makes something true or not, it's undeniable that there's obviously a positive military operation happening, or an aspect of the military operation, So I think interpreting the political events in the past 4 years has been a little difficult. It used to be that you could just assume everything was negative and just kind of leave it at that. But now it makes me wonder if there is some type of operation happening. Who's going to be the most catalyzing for consciousness? What's going to wake people up the most if somebody gets indicted, if somebody goes down?
Yeah.
Probably like a Hillary Clinton, right?
Yeah.
So
for myself, I've been jaded on the fact that so many times we've been talking about Hillary getting arrested any day now, and then I just like gave up on it entirely. I would love for the truth to come out, but there's so many people within like the media and the establishment that are pro Hillary that if it does come out, it's so easy just to say it's a conspiracy theory now, right? Legitimate emails came out that said things that really were incriminating, but even the regular person doesn't have time to not only research it, but will only listen to what they're being told. And what they're being told, those guys are just conspiracy theorists, right? If they look at the body count with the Clintons, right? There's a lot of evidence to prove this thing, but it does sound crazy to even say. So people jump on too quickly saying that you're just crazy conspiracy theorists. And, they've done a really good job on coining that term for the last 40 something years. And at this point, I don't know, like I want to believe that people can come up to their own conclusions and we can make a shift in consciousness without having some authority figure tell us. But when I look at the world, I see that most people won't, even if the media says aliens are real, aliens are real, aliens are real, they're probably gonna have to say it every single day for like 4 weeks before somebody goes, hey, did you know aliens are real? Like before everybody figures it out. Like that's how docile people have become. But we could have an awakening overnight. That's still possible, right? We didn't expect this coronavirus to do what it did and give us all this collective dark night of the soul just like that, right? So right now things are so uncertain, we don't know. But what you just mentioned is a good conversation to have, and I'll start it out with this, and I would love your opinions. But you probably remember the splitting of the world theory, right? I think Wilcock was really behind that in the beginning too. Fourth density positive, fourth density negative, right? And, back 2008, 2009, 2012, I was like, contemplating on that. And then after 2012, I was like, no soul left behind. We're all going for it together. But then who am I to judge in this reality based on the context of good and bad? It's good to ascend. It's not good to ascend. Who am I to judge someone who chooses a path before incarnating to have an experience that is negative? And sometimes it's actually even more of a beautiful thing if you chose to stay unconscious and you incarnated here and you chose to live that journey. And I chose to wake up. I chose to transcend and leave it. It doesn't mean that I'm any better than the person that didn't, and that experience of the darkness that individual has given us has allowed me to have the contrast of duality that I came here for in the first place. And without that, where would I be? And it goes all the way back to the Gnostic text of Lucifer, when the original Christian text never said that Lucifer came down here to be the devil. He was a volunteer. God basically said, I'm creating this reality, this realm, and I need my most trusted angel to go down to this planet and give people the experience of darkness so that they can learn what the light is. And the most trusted angel, Lucifer, raised his hand. This is before 325 AD and before the Council of Nicaea, before Constantine completely manipulated Christianity. So the original text is even saying that this was all a game in the first place, right? So I feel like I was at, okay, yes, we're going to split. Everybody's frequency is going to be shifted. Maybe one day we'll exist in a world where we just don't see those people anymore because our frequency range is so different. Then I went to like, oh no, nobody left behind. We got to go together. But now I'm at a neutral place where I don't judge whether you're ascending or you feeling like you're not going to ascend. And it seems that we could be going to that world because more than ever now, man, we're so divided. Our belief systems are so different that there's even been prophecies that the U.S. will split into 4 tribal communities. And I see that when I look at the geography of the U.S. and how people have similar beliefs. We can get along like that, right? So it makes sense that people will go to communities in the future that actually they're more in alignment with, because people are really upset at the other right now, right? And it doesn't seem like it's getting any better. It seems like it's getting a little more divided. But that's not a negative thing. That's just the human experience that we have right now. Where are we going to be on the end of it? I am hopeful that we're going to have a world of unity and transparency. And if you choose not to be in that world, then, blessings to you. But that's kind of my 2 cents on it.
Well, it's also understanding the reality of creating your own timeline also. I think that that's entirely possible. And it's something that people aren't aware of, or maybe people don't practice it enough, but you can put yourself on that positive timeline. If there is a split, like you're saying, I think that we all have the ability to create that future that we want. And that's the whole part of the awakening, is to wake up to realizing you have that power.
Mm-hmm.
So if the question is, like what's going to happen? Are we all going to collectively ascend, or is there going to be a bifurcation or splitting? I think to your point, Neil, and I agree that, if free will is real, then everybody has to actually have a choice. And, if the universe just forced everybody to ascend, then that wouldn't really be free will, would it?
Where's the learning in that too? Yeah.
Exactly. So I think if you can see with the eyes of the creator, then you realize that every soul is actually doing everything they need to be doing right now to evolve and grow. Mm-hmm. And that's the beautiful majesty of the creator's creation, is that the creator set up the game so perfectly that no matter what you did, you were always going to be served soul growth. Wow. Yeah. Just the fact that that's even possible, it's like mind blowing. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I think we're in a situation where, and because of the way, human nature works, if you've never taken the time to really understand the truth and develop your own thinking about why something is true, especially if it's a belief you hold, then if somebody tries to degrade that belief or a new truth comes out that invalidates it, you're going to be thrown into a tailspin because you never had possession of the truth to begin with. You just had a blind belief. And right now we're living in a world where there's just so many blind beliefs flowing around that you're going to feel a lot of healthy pain from that situation. It's kind of like when you go to grab a pan on the stove and you don't have an oven mitt on, what happens? You get burned, right? Well, if you're smart, if you really take stock of the truth of what happened there and absorb that experience, you probably won't want to grab another pan on the stove again without an oven mitt, right? So, right now we're living in a situation where there's so much BS and fake news out there, and it's all becoming more apparent that the creator's plan for installing and improving people's thinking by having them suffer the consequences of bad thinking is like ramping up to the nth degree. We're in like double black diamond, like expert level, like version of that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So yeah, I'm really hopeful. And, I think this, to leave this last point, I'll say that everybody has their own process in this. It's very easy to get wrapped up in what you think everybody else should be doing. Especially when you start getting a few nuggets of truth, you're like, oh, this is the truth. And, you got to believe it. And if you don't believe it, then you're a shill, and, all these kind of things. And it's like, we're all on the path. We're all on our own path on the mountain. And you got to pay attention to what you're doing right now. And as long as you're protecting your rights and you're not infringing on anybody else's rights, then you should just encourage people to do what they need to do, that kind of thing. So
it's the universal paradox. We're one, but we're also individual. How does that exist?
Right.
The universe is infinite, but our minds can only think of things in finite terms. How is that possible? Therein lies the illusion,
Exactly.
So, and I feel like I trip out often about how different my thought process is compared to many other people, right? And especially my own family. Like, I could never imagine my family ever being into this secret space program, ETs, Pleiadians, Arcturians, channeling, like sound frequency is science, and that's still like fringe for them, right? So it's like when we get into the real like nitty gritty topics that we all talk about, it's just so different, and we're existing in different realities. And a lot of people don't even understand that the reality that we're within even exists. And if you bring it up to them, I have brought it up to people, and it just goes right through them. They don't even acknowledge it. It's almost like a frequency mismatch, It's just
like
habits.
Fairy tale nonsense.
Yeah.
Or it just doesn't register. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm working part-time right now, just a seasonal thing at Lowe's, right? And part of the reason why I actually decided to do it was I realized working there is taking too much time for Portal to Ascension. And I'm like, damn, I could be doing events right now. But part of the main reason was I don't hang out with enough people that aren't into this stuff. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be around people that don't even know about this and see how I engage with them, because I'm 100% this all the time. All my conversations are this, people I talk to. So it's like I'm actually experimenting with myself now to see if I can still talk to regular people. Because it's really important to be able to communicate what you feel to everyone, not just keep the same jargon going on. So I've been working on that. And part of Portal to Ascension, I've been saying from the beginning, is not to preach to the choir, but is to speak to the linear-minded people, meaning the ones that don't think in multidimensional terms like we are here right now, and communicate these forms of awareness, whether it's quantum physics, extraterrestrials, secret space program, ascension, in a way that even regular people would understand, because it is truly science. You can do a whole thing. I did an 8-hour online conference called Science of Ascension, and I challenge any person who isn't into this to look at that and not question whether we're actually ascending. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So it's really about getting those tools and being able to communicate to them. And also, to add to the splitting of the world thing, I do think some events are going to happen that many people that are so closed off to that reality right now, don't even know it exists, will come over to that, because there's going to be life-changing situations that are going to occur, drops of downloads, information that may get released that will have to make them question their reality. And many of them will probably end up where we're at. Some of them won't, So I'm hopeful that that's the route that we're going to be all taking.
That's interesting. I'm glad you said
well
that.
Said.
I'm glad you said that about going into your work and being there around people who aren't at your state of consciousness. Because when I go to work, what I found myself doing for a while was just checking out of this reality and just going back to my old self, the way I know that they would be comfortable around me, and I would find myself doing that. And, I realized the more and more I started talking about this stuff or just dropping little nuggets here and there, some people don't jive with it, but other people have stuff to say too. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. It's really an interesting experiment. But I think a lot of people need to hear that, because too many of us are going around not being ourselves. We're not existing in authenticity. And I think that's a big problem, especially with truthers, because we're so worried about what other people might think, that it's not, we're at a point now where we have to start, planting seeds. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's no holding back now. Now's the time.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to add to that is, psychologically, one of the things they do is they control us, like you were saying, Tyler, through our emotions. And our emotional system itself is the social dynamic system. So I'm actually going to be covering a lot of this in the third season I'm going to do of Into the Storm. It's going to be all about the inner child and how the cabal hijack our inner child and use it against us. And we are herd creatures. We're herd animals. But we also have an apex predator side to us. And the school of thought is called RK selection theory that gets into this. And so what that means is that, very simply, every person you know of and you interact with in your local community, whether they're in your house, they're your neighbors, they're the people you work with, there's this part of you, the inner child, that demands that you're transparent and you reveal your true self to them. And if you do that, and it's a good exchange, you will feel a release of dopamine, you will feel a release of serotonin. It'll reduce your pain. It'll increase your intelligence capacity. It'll increase positive emotion. So we have all of these systems designed to reward us and make us smarter and healthier for having healthy social attachments, right? Now think about the way we live in our world. The way we live in our world is most of us get all our social interaction through this thing these days. You know what I mean? So most of the human beings you interact with aren't even physically near you. And the ones you do interact with physically, you've got this NPC debased, cardboard cutout version of yourself that you brandish to interact with them, right? Mm-hmm. And, anybody who's gone through an awakening experience and then goes out in the world feels this weird feeling of almost being like a fake version of yourself, because that's what has to happen. So what you're doing, I think that's fantastic. As a matter of fact, me and my roommate were just talking about the same thing. We want to find soup kitchen or, whatever, some kind of group where we can go and interact with other people, because there's a whole part of my brain that's like, dude, you're not talking to enough people. You need to go hang out with more people. You need to go hug more people. You need to be authentic with more people and use your hands to do something in the world and not just flit around the computer all day long. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, I'm telling you, there's psychological research. They've known this for a very long time. The neurotic, negative self-talk thinking that we're all plagued by in the modern world starts to go down, and it's all just about getting back to basics, finding a way to love each other again, finding a way to be authentic with each other again. So yeah.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Yes. Absolutely. I agree with that. And I like how you said that cardboard cutout version of yourself.
That's exactly what it feels like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, you always have the best, most detailed, elaborate analogies.
Yes.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I'm glad somebody likes them.
It's like I'm 5 minutes into it. I'm like, oh, this is an analogy.
It's almost like you came up with it before, but you didn't. It's like in the moment too. That's the crazy part.
Yeah, I'm just like freestyling. Yeah, this is what happens when you spend most of your time like reading shit.
Yeah. You mentioned the secret space program, Neil, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on this Starlink satellite system or whatever that Elon Musk put out. Mm-hmm. I saw today in an article that he's working on dimming the satellites so they're not as bright for the next launch, which is because people are complaining they're too bright. That's the whole article, which is dumb. I don't know. Weird. And he's talking about starting up his own internet that's going to work with these satellites. This is interesting to me. What do you think's going on here
with Elon Musk in general?
Yeah, and that whole thing.
Yeah.
And the satellites, the Starlink, yeah.
So I think Justin probably has more information on this one, but I would say that with Elon Musk and what he's doing with SpaceX and satellites up there, growing up, I was always told that you cannot go up into space without having multiple governments kind of give you the stamp of approval, that there's like basically like a mafia of governments, and you can't even go through the ozone layer. First of all, a little detour, side note, whatever happened to every time we go through the ozone layer, we weaken it, right? Remember that? And that completely went out of the window, by the way.
That doesn't exist.
That was just bullshit, right?
Yeah,
so I'm thinking like, in order to have advancement, we might need some sort of privatized company in order to give us that, because everything else within like governments are kind of stagnant, or they go black ops and black budget, and they do things off the books, right? Like maybe our own government. So I'm thinking maybe he has good intentions and is attempting to go into space in order to further us more than maybe NASA. But at the same time, his level of involvement and connection to individuals like that are allowing him to go into space and do what he's doing, these people have to be high elite, unless what they told us about having these being able to go into space, anybody can do it. Or that's not what I've been told. I've been heard for many years now that you actually do need approval. So the people that give approval aren't really the people that are actually have the benefit of all humanity in store, right? So with Elon, I really don't know. I'm kind of just observing to see what's going to happen with him. My gut feeling is that we spoke about the other day, useful idiots. Like maybe he's just one of those, right? But he's kind of assisting them in order to push forward an agenda. But he maybe thinks that he just loves space and wants to further advancement. I don't really know if he's in cahoots with the cabal and knows about some, black agenda that's going on.
Was he talking about AI too? Like, because he used to warn against AI, and now he's kind of like going the opposite, saying
exactly.
It's inevitable, so we might as well.
Well, to me, like he has to be the most mysterious public figure right now. Nobody knows what's going on with him. It's always a debate, and it's so confusing. And what were your what did you have to say on that, Justin?
Well, to specifically address your question, I haven't heard about the story you're talking about, so I can't get too much into what it is. I will speculate on what you said, which is that I do know that Musk, I believe this was I think in 2012 or something like that, he was talking about putting up satellites to broadcast internet to the world for free, or, give people access to wireless internet, something like that. And it seemed like a really good idea at the time. And then all the 5G stuff started to come out and, people kind of got a little freaked out. Rightfully so, probably. And so, I think based on what I know of Musk, and especially reading his body language and the way he speaks and the way he acts, so trying to look at it from a psychological profile perspective, he appears to me like somebody who was potentially groomed for the role that he's in right now. He exhibits Wilhelm Reich. He talked a lot about this. He has what I would call eye armor. which is there's a type of muscular rigidity in the eye that usually indicates a disturbed like 90 days after the womb or being born period. So I don't know, that could just be from him having weird parents, or it could be because there was something done to him. I don't know. But it seems like a lot of the issues he's spearheading, when you listen to the guys, you know, especially off the cuff, like on Joe Rogan, it sounds like they're his beliefs, you know, it sounds like anyway. Although they could be, you know, manipulated. I get the feeling though, like you were saying, Neil, I think he's like a useful idiot in the sense that he's a guy that isn't necessarily in on anything, but he was peripherally, you know, you had people come in and like encourage him to do something. Like maybe when he was in high school, like this dude from, you know, the NSA came like, hey man, you should get into computers, because they knew if they planted that seed in his head, he would do all this kind of stuff with later on in his life with computers and things like this. So I think one thing I'll say about the AI, first of all, I think simulation theory, which is the idea that we're living in a simulation controlled by aliens, I think that's like basically like creationism for people who don't believe in God, because it has all of the same marks of a universal deity, except instead of a deity, it's an alien race who created a computer. You know what I mean? So that's something interesting to consider. I also think the idea of us merging with AI is a little misguided. However, there is a core truth to it, because your body itself is a kind of computer system. And so we are souls indwelling this, you know, meat suit, and this meat suit has a whole set of programming that, you know, functionally it's basically like just like a computer. So there is, I would argue, some truth to the idea that consciousness, the human soul, has to gain enough mastery so that it can properly take control over the computer's AI system that is the body, right? But I also think it would be very careful. We have to be extremely careful about putting chips in our bodies or anything like that, because, you know, I think it's pretty obvious. I won't go too much on tangents there. So
no, nothing external, no foreign object is compatible with our body, which doesn't matter how you approach it. I just don't agree with it. I saw really quick. I know we're running out of time.
Sure.
But I saw a Reiki healer for the first time, and I had just had a dentist appointment like 2 weeks prior. And she's like, "Did you recently have a shot?" I was like, "No, I couldn't think of anything." And she's like, "Are you sure?" She was getting a vision of me getting injected with something. I was like, "Oh, wait, they numbed me up at the dentist." And she's like, "That's it." She goes, "Whatever's in that is not compatible with your body." And she helped me energetically remove it. And it was really interesting to me that she even picked up on that. So that just tells me, you know, if somebody is tapped in and can feel that, you know, imagine all the other stuff that we're putting into our body, how it's just not compatible. And what would we be like if we weren't being just pummeled with all this foreign object, even the chemtrails, just the air we're breathing and living in itself.
Yeah, I feel our bodies are like the best tools. We have the ability to connect to, you know, if you want to talk about the chakra system alone, I feel like each of them represents a dimension. And there's a book, Bringers of the Dawn, with the Pleiadians, channeled Pleiadians, right? And they talk about the 12th up to the 13th chakra, and how that, you know, the 7 within us, the 8th one is 1 foot above us. And then it goes into the atmosphere, the solar system, the galaxy, the central sun, which is the black hole in the center. And the higher up you leave after your 8th chakra, the more people have the same chakra. So, for example, the one large on our planet, there are thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, I don't know, people that have that same one. All the way to the central sun, then you have entire soul groups going on, right? So I feel like we have the ability to tap into all those dimensions of awareness and not only download our galactic history, complete remembrance of who we are, all the tools and techniques we need to transcend reality and visualize whatever we need to do and create and manifest things, right? So what's happening with this whole junk DNA, unlocking our DNA, 12-strand DNA activation that people are talking about, to me seems like a science of the fact that some parts of our consciousness and our body have been shut down or not able to exist in this frequency range. And now we're shifting into a different octave of existence where we're able to tap into those tools. We don't need anything external. If you look at some of the books about Mars and Maldek and what happened there and what happened on Atlantis, you hear about the external Merkaba. The external Merkaba are basically tools and implants utilized in order to achieve certain states of consciousness, but it had a backfiring effect. Every single story ended up in devastation. So what we're doing now is creating the internal Merkaba, which goes into the fact that we can use our Merkaba to travel interdimensionally, right? So I think we don't need anything external. Maybe there's some sort of agenda being pushed that we do so that we can move away from the fact that we have everything we need within us.
Yeah. And beautifully said. And by the way, that book, Bringers of the Dawn, if anyone hasn't read it, it's interesting. So it was a channeled Pleiadian message from the 80s, I believe, the late 80s.
Barbara Marciniak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you read it now, it seems like it could have been written yesterday. It is that, I mean, it is that pure of information, and it is so relevant. You almost, I had to stop and like, okay, when was this written? And like, it's really profound. They basically predicted everything that we're in right now in that book.
Straight up.